Namaskar, it's 20 to 8 now. It's the 2nd of March. Tomorrow morning I'm going to a medical meeting, a pharmacy meeting. Don't know how I'll perform there. They ask so much questions and during the lecture, and they assess you, your merit as a pharmacist, as a practitioner, and so on. Anyway, I've registered this year for the pharmacy board. They assisted me. I able to register despite some problem with Google's getting the form filled up and my photograph downloaded and so. But the body here, the local body here, assisted me through being a senior pharmacist with a reasonably good reputation. Despite my unorthodox way of as a pharmacist, how I practice and so on. My unorthodox way, you know. There was one German dad who was working in Guyana here, you know, he was from Germany. And the other European monks they told me, at that time I had a good relation with the European monks, the Western monks. They told me he's very famous for having unorthodox techniques, for bringing people to a higher level of consciousness, you know, to remove their bad habits and bad mental stagnancy and so on. He had this unorthodox. I don't know if I can measure up with him, you know. When he was here in Guyana, he had a very good reputation for that. Now, this month, on the 8th, it would be Sivaratri. And we are more connected with the Kovan Ashram, the Bharat Sivashram Sang Guyana Sivashram Sang, because my father attended there. And when we were growing up, he was always telling us about that ashram, stories with Swami Purnanand, his days there. He was also talking about ashram, Hindu college. He used to talk about Swami Sicharan, Swami Purnanand. So we grew up having a kind of relation, have a kind of affiliation with that, because they were the Swami, they were following my father around also. Being a student there, I think they were taking tabs on him. Because I remember when he married, and then we were little children then, I was about 8 years old, 7-year-old, and we were living in Best Road. My mother was transferred from Mahasivaratri Hospital, so they told us that we have to get a house in Vredenhoek to live, or somehow she will have to travel to work and get at Best Hospital. So my father's idea was he didn't want to go back home here in Bel Air to my grandmother's home and beg them for lodging again. So that time he was riding a bicycle, you know. People are very they're very kind of like sharp about those days, you know, when he was riding his bicycle. But like many other government servants, as he worked his way up in his job and he got seniority promotions, and so he made life better for himself and for his family. So anyway, he was riding a bicycle. Then at that time we used to live at Mahasivaratri Hospital, and he would take these yellow buses or the blue and white buses that he had long ago here, these long buses. I think they were holding about 40 people, 50 people, and he would take those buses every day to travel from Brickdam to Mahasivaratri. And then when my mother got transferred from 1979, Miss Yvonne Bullen went to take over from her, the pharmacist who is now at George Hospital. She went there to take over, and then my mother, she had to leave. They had time for her to get house and to prepare to leave, and so at that time the Ministry of Health had 2 drivers who were very friendly with us, who liked us a lot, and they would always assist when we had to move. That was Mr. Bishop and Mr. Lal, Mr. Kishore Lal, a very short guy, dark complexion, a little deep brown, slight grayish brown, dark complexion guy. They would move us. Mr. Lal used to drive a canter truck. He would pack up, and usually when they're moving us, two vehicles would move us. Mr. Bishop would drive the big truck and Mr. Lal would drive the smaller vehicle. That's how they took us from Maikoni over there. It was also excitement when we moved, you know, to see the new house, to go through the room and have the porters in the vehicle unpacking the furnitures, our things, and helping my parents set up. It was a very nice atmosphere, very friendly and warm those days, you know, so natural. We were children running all around excited, you know. I remember when we went to Maikoni there, when we first arrived there. At that time, we were very well-groomed city children, you know. We went up there and the kids were very kind of happy to see us, wanted to touch us. We were so beautiful and handsome, and those guys were so rustic country boys. And though their parents, one was an agriculture officer, his wife was Miss Shanti Singh, and he was Mr. Babali, Muslim guy married to, and these boys run over, and they were so run over the house to see us moving in and people fitting them. They were living in the compound too, you know, agriculture officer there. One of his sons became a doctor, the other guys, I don't know what became of them, you know, but they were always, when I remember when I first went there, I didn't want to talk to them, you know. I feel somewhat kind of kind of repulse from talking to them. You know, at that time I was very sensitive, very clean, very delicate, and I felt something about them, you know, something polished energy that I didn't like, unrefined. Well, my father one day told me, why you don't talk with these boys, why you don't talk with the neighbors, y'all should go talk, make friends. And so that's how friendship came about in the case of Maikoni. But I always remember we had such a beautiful garden there in Maikoni in the yard. My father used to plant cabbage, pak choy, watermelon, corn, sorrel, all kind of fruits. He had this special touch for agriculture, and he was a good farmer. Being his father was a farmer, he knew all the things about farming, making drain, making banks, chipping the soil, preparing the soil, and so on. And the porter at Maikoni Hospital would help him. I remember two particular porters who were very friendly with us. There was Mr. Goodman, yeah. He was very smiling. He used to control the stores at Maikoni Hospital there, and I remember he always liked to give us cheese. He used to have these big cheese, like these big ice you buy from ice by the ice house there in Tiger Bay. He used to have these big cheese like that, and he would cut, and I would go peeping in his stores when he's cutting the cheese, and he would be smiling me, and I was thinking about those cheese, and he would give my mother a little block, a little piece. So we would, when they get their stocks, and so that was Mr. Goodman. Another one was Mr. Haral, an Indian guy who was a porter then. He was very friendly with us. And my father and him used to box and wrestle sometimes. One time he defeated my father, and they went to sport in Mahika there, Haral and my father. And then they had a friendly fight, and he defeated my father. My father got upset. He didn't want to talk with him anymore and all these things. Well, Haral had farms and so by the hospital, Maikoni. And we would chop cane and so on, bring for us vegetables and other things nearby. The hospital, he had a nice farm there. So then where we moved, Mr. Kishore Lal and Bishop took us over to Westdam Hospital. I remember my father, how we settled there. All this memory came back, how I became introduced to the ashram, you know, Mahasivaratri ashram sang. My father said, you will go and live right over there on the river. We don't have to live in town and travel every day over. He's going to settle there, and his children are going to school right there over the river. We find out that they have a school, and there are shops and police station. They have everything, post office over there, regional office, how they operate their system. And so you go to school, and then the region will look over you. They have their education officer. You go to lessons and so on. They have a good school. So they said all of that will be organized for us for the transfer and go over. I remember my father told me, remember he had his bicycle and he was riding down New Road there, searching house to house for a place to rent. He didn't get on New Road, then he went into Best Road. That time it was Tamrandam. He go right down until he reach Mr. Dean house. That's near the Hindu temple. Actually didn't go direct to the house, but Mr. Barlow, who was a bailiff officer, Mr. Barlow, when my father introduced himself, and so he said he knows my grandfather in Bel Air here, that their family, some kind of distant family, you know. I was surprised that my mother had family over there. So and afterwards we found other family on New Road, like Dulichan, who was an electrician, with his aunts Rajo and Bago. They would come to visit. When we came back in Georgetown here, they came to visit my grandmother and would come home here many times until they passed away. They liked my mother so much, I don't know why. They were just like her, complexion, body built, everything, you know. And so what happened is that my heart story, I can remember also my father, he would go over searching for a bicycle, riding down the road, house to house, searching for a place to rent. And afterwards he went into the Best Road, and Barlow helped him to meet Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean was some kind of intellectual guy, intelligent guy. He went to school, had a good education, and so on. Mr. Dean offered him the house there, and it had a big yard going right down with so many fruit trees. Maybe I think it's about 1 or 2 acres down at the back. Used to go, all kind of fruit trees. Then they had a trench, and then the crab bush you go over there. So when we went there in 79, we lived 1 year in Best Road before going up back into Best Hospital, Westdam Hospital. So what happened is that when we were there, you know, at the hospital, one day I heard my father saying that people from Swami School, Hindu College, were there in the neighborhood. They were selling books. When I peeped out, I looked throughout this step there, the little house. I saw these guys in yellow, some with white, and there was one very radiant Swami. He was huge, big built. He was like a light, all of him. My father said that was Sicharan. My father pointed out, he said that is his school teacher from Hindu College. So I was looking at this amazing sight. These guys were singing, they were going house to house, sharing out leaflets, books. That time books were so cheap. I didn't know about yoga, I didn't know about mantras. My mother had a strong Christian background. My father also, being Hindus, they were practicing Christians, you know. It was popular in those days that you go to school, you conform, become Christian. So I was outside there. I didn't know what I was really, because my mother told he was coming back to Hinduism, and my father also was, you know, kind of somewhere there. So my mother went out to meet them when they came in front of our place there, and she bought one book, a little, not a big Hindu Twam, they had a smaller version. She told me she paid $1, and I saw her chatting with the Swamis, and I saw the book. And she used to do Hawan from that book like every Diwali, and she used to read the prayers in the night before we sleep, put us to bed reading those prayers. Mantra Hinam, Kriya Hinam, Bhakti Hinam, Janardana, Yat Pujatam Maya Devi, Paripurnam Tadatsumi, Papuam Papa Karmuam Papa Atma Papa Sambhava, Trahimama Pundari Kaksham Sarva Papa Haru Hari, Tumeva Mata Chapita, Tumeva. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, all those mantras she used to be singing, and that's where she got to learn them from. That book explained the Hinduism so well, you know. I think she converted right away back to Hinduism. And when we left Maikoni also, there was a very touching Hindu incident, you know. Because at that time, in those eras, they hadn't so much doctors. At that time, 2 or 3 doctors would go to Cuba to train a year. Some who do very good in the A levels and so would go to Germany, England, or if the parents are wealthy, they would pay for them to go and study out there. But they were very hard to reach, actually practically inaccessible and very expensive money-wise. There was a few doctors from India, China, Korea that were working here. So my mother went up in those time. A dispenser was very important. A dispenser is a British train. They can function and they are recognized worldwide. They are British system, train dispensers. And then you have the medics, was later created by the government. The medics, they can only work in Guyana, but I think they're open and accommodated in some Caribbean places. It's a Guyanese creation, the medics. Guyana created that medical personnel, the medics is. So when my mother was working there, she was so very appreciated for the work she done in Maikoni there. Remember the church in Branch Road, that's next to S.K. Joseph place. There was a Hindu temple. They invited us just before we left and pack up. We went there afternoon around 6 o'clock. They had bhajans singing and so, and they thanked my mother for the service she rendered. I think my father was there also. They put garland around our necks and they wish us all the best. That's how we left Maikoni. I wonder if there are any people at that temple who can remember us now. Probably they're very old, or many of them have died. I heard S.K. Joseph died. And there was another one who used to drive a taxi. Can't remember his name. Mr. Druva, or can't remember his name, but that's how we left on there. And then I get encounter with the Kovanjan Ashram people, you know. And they went 2 times or 3 times more in Best Road, but I never saw them back. And then when I passed for Richard, my mother always says she want me to go to Indians Education Trust College. So then they had a census. They were asking you which school you want to go if you pass, and so my mother said Indians Education Trust College. She want me to go there. In fact, I'm planning to make a little documentary video about that school. I have sweet memories, you know, the Indian culture, Indian Education Trust, which is now the Richard Ishmael Secondary. I don't know if I'll get permission from the headmistress or so, but when I passed for that school, which my mother was always dreaming for me to go to, I go right there. And the afternoon I would go home to catch a 3:30 boat, and I saw the same radiant Swami again, and this time he was with another a monk dressed in yellow, and they would be standing up downstairs by the exit where the boat would go to dock on the other stelling. Usually I would be on the other side also, trying to rush out. I would be on that same side waiting at the front of the exit, and he go and stand up right there also in the afternoon 3:30 when I'm crossing. So one day my father was there with a bicycle, and he confirmed it was the same monks who we saw a couple of years ago in Best Road, and he said it was Sicharan. So one day, we always see them there crossing when we're going. So one day my father had the courage to approach them. He was a little tipsy, you know, had a little alcohol. So he flicked the stand down on the bike and let it stand up by itself. And me and him went over, and he talked to Swamiji. He said, Swamiji, you remember me? He said, what's your name? He said, Mr. Gear. He said, Balchan. My father said, yes. He said, yes, you remember him. He said, where are you working now? He sees the police. And so they chat. And then Swamiji, you're a little high, you're on alcohol. He said, yeah, just a little bit. I know they talk a little, and he came back. He said, Swamiji, you remember him? And so that's how I used to see them crossing there. And when we came up to live here in Georgetown, my grandmother told me they used to visit the temple there, the Bel-Air man there by Big G side, by down the road over there. And he said one day, my grandmother said they would go, when Swamiji come, they would go there with the flowers and the aarti. And the people there in the temple didn't want them to go up to meet Swamiji. And Swamiji said no, he called on them and tell them, come and do aarti, come and let them share your parsad and do what they gotta do. He thought give them special attention, you know, right there at the temple. So that's how I learned that. From my memory at the temple there, all I remember is as a little boy, I was just maybe 3 or 4 years. They used to take me there at the